In this first and final episode of Near a Fern, I am your host, Max, and I will be interviewing Addison Verret. So good to meet you finally. Please have a seat.
Thank you.
So, what can you tell me about this topic you've been emailing me nonstop for the past 3 weeks about?
Right. So, renewable energy is when energy is derived from a natural resource, which are replenished at a higher rate than is being consumed by the energy refining process, right? For example, solar energy panels are harvesting less energy than the sun is producing, right?
Yeah.
Renewable energy not only benefits the country by creating a reliable and efficient source of energy, but it also allows young people to have a voice in the government.
And what does this have to do with the Constitution exactly?
Okay, so what I said before about letting young people have a voice in the government, there's a case in Montana with the state Supreme Court, Held versus Montana, which brought up the problem that their government was being unconstitutional because they were not considering climate change when approving of a fossil fuel project. So if we look at Article 2, Section 3 of the Montana Constitution, it states that all persons are born free and have certain inalienable rights. They include the right to a clean and healthful environment. Also in the Constitution, Article 4, Section 1 states that the state and each person shall maintain and improve a clean and healthy environment in Montana for the present and future generations. These teens did not demand money, but wanted the government to drastically reduce the amount of fossil fuels being extracted and ultimately stop extracting by 2050. Renewable energy and cleaner environments are in many states' constitutions. One of the main issues resulting from this being at a state level is what's known as pass-through states, right? And I'll talk more about this later.
Okay. And I think the question everyone wants to know: what does the 6 principles have to? What are they in play for in this issue?
So if we look at popular sovereignty, right, renewable energy cannot be achieved without meaningful contributions, right? People must be able to take independent action or community-driven initiatives to produce energy with renewable resources. So if we take a look at federalism, pass-through states block multi-state energy construction. Now this is when one state is producing some sort of renewable energy source and it has to pass through different states to go to another state, right? So say one state has a river and they want to build a dam, right? And they want to share that energy with other states. Some states want to block that because they don't believe in renewable energy for some reason because they're not benefiting from that. So they don't want construction in their state if they're not going to benefit from it. 3 ways they do this is they view power line construction based on in-state needs, right? So if they're not going to benefit from it, then why have it? When states are deciding to use eminent domain to use private property to build large infrastructure projects, some states use public use in a way that excludes pass-through transmission lines. Another way is some states explicitly prohibit out-of-state transmission line companies from applying for a sitting permit.
See, and going off that kind of, how do people feel, or rather, how are they impacted by the issues based on their demographic data?
Right. Okay, so if we look at these 2 charts, middle-class Americans seem to be the most supportive of renewable energy. This could just be because that they're younger and that they know more about renewable energy and how it's going to affect their life and future generations.
Right.
Or it could just be that the old Americans don't really care about it, right? You know, they got a bunch of money, why have a few solar panels?
Baby boomers.
Right. The other graph is about race. We got the minority and the non-Hispanic white. They're roughly at the same level, right? You know, this could just be like some outliers or whatever, but generally at the same level. So I don't think that race would have any play in whether they support renewable energy or not.
Mm-hmm.
Regardless, a lot of white non-Hispanic people are older, and it doesn't seem like they care about it. So I mean, there's a lot of factors. So I think generally the income would determine demographic.
And how does this issue connect to political parties?
Right. So there's a polar difference between Republicans and Democrats, like there always is, usually is.
Okay.
Republicans support oil and natural gas development rather than renewable energy. 73% of them say that they would not be happy if renewable energy was ranked as a higher priority than other national issues. However, on the left side, an overwhelming 90% of Democrats support the renewable energy development over crude oils. And in this this graphic I have, you can see solar power, wind power are both renewable energies.
Yeah.
And Democratic people support them more rather than Republican.
Okay.
However, something that is interesting, at least I find interesting, is that more crude ways of harvesting energy, like such as offshore drilling and hydraulic fracturing and coal mining, you can see a huge difference between Republicans and Democrats, while solar power and wind power, there's only a slight margin between the difference.
Yeah.
But yeah.
And I know that the media has a lot of say in what people are thinking around this issue. What exactly is your thoughts on how the media plays in this issue?
Okay. So generally, journalists would portray media coverage to support a perspective of their audience. Because of most Americans support renewable energy and dislike the development of oil production, the media will have a bias against new oil infrastructure. Yeah. You can see I have a few headlines from the response that media had with the Willow Project a few years ago.
Right.
Mostly all journalists focused on the negatives instead of how the Willow Project could support the economy.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And the election process, tell me about that. How is that impacted by this?
Mm-hmm. Okay, so you can see in this graphic that I have, the only projected growth is renewable energies.
Yeah.
And so since there's a projected growth in renewable energy, there will be a projected growth in the need for people who are going to support renewable energy, right? And so these people are going to have a higher demand for people who also support renewable energy.
Now, getting into more of the juicier sides of things.
Okay.
What is the executive branch has done about this issue?
Okay. So if you take a look at Biden's executive order 14057, it has a goal to achieve 100% carbon pollution-free energy by 2030.
Yep.
Another issue or thing that we could look at is in Washington State, Governor Inslee signed many policies in the past decade to ensure that the state is doing their part in reducing coal energy. This puts Washington in the most ambitious pathway to total clean energy by 2045.
I see. Now, the legislative branch, what have they done about this issue?
Right. So the American Renewable Energy and Efficiency Act will have these goals. 400,000 new jobs will have eventually saved $39 per household annually by 2030, which might not seem like a lot, but it would in total save about $90 billion. Develop more than $200 billion in capital investments regarding renewable energy, which would lead to a quadrupling of renewable energy production by 2025.
Wow, I like the sounds of that. Now, I'm sure you can see where this is going. What has the judicial branch done about this issue?
Right. So there's a lot of examples in teens voicing their opinions to their state Supreme Court all over the country, like the one we talked about in Montana.
Yeah.
In June of 2022, the U.S. Supreme Court ruled to curb Environmental Protection Agency's ability to regulate greenhouse gas emissions of power plants. This made the state's job to regulate power plants' emission, right? However, Governor Inslee responded to this and said it was a stunning reversal of environmental laws, that it took a wrecking ball to the availability of the federal government to restrain pollution. The New York Governor Kathy Hochul and California's Governor Gavin Newsom signed a written statement with Inslee to comment on the ruling. These statements wrote about their disappointment in the Supreme Court's decision. They also said that at a time when we're seeing devastating droughts, wildfires, and storms become the norm, the Supreme Court has sided with polluters at the expense of the American people. This ruling makes it clear that the actions of governors and state legislators are more important than ever before. There's ultimately still a lot of work to be done around having the government's branches all work together to fight the climate crisis and switch to renewable energy.
Yeah. Couldn't agree more. Now, how does this connect to the overall government's budget?
Okay. So on December 11th of 2023, it's a little over a month ago, Inslee proposed an additional $941 million for climate change, which included renewable energy development. Also, the Department of Energy is working on a new method of solar manufacturing, which won't rely on imported components, is a part of over a $15 billion in efforts to make renewable energy infrastructure more efficient and cost-effective.
God, that's a lot. That is a lot. Now, let's reflect on some things. How did this class help you understand the issue, even if it was never directly talked about in class?
Okay. So this class helped me understand how different parts of the government respond to the public's action. When someone is making a case, how it could move up the chain from a local court to Supreme Court and then to the U.S. Supreme Court, right? It just sort of helped me learn about just all the different structures and all how they tie together and all act on one sort of clause.
Right, yeah. And this is kind of a personal question from me to you, but it just got me thinking. Why should we all care about this issue, even if not personally impacted?
Okay. So renewable energy will make the world a better place to live in the future. That's just kind of a given.
Love it.
Starting to develop more infrastructure to make energy from reliable resources will future-proof our country.
I see. And can people be motivated to vote or advocate regarding this issue?
Yeah, so by voting for an increased budget in renewable energy development, it will help speed up the process of making the country more carbon neutral.
Yeah, I see. Now, lastly, to finish this up, I know you're a busy guy, but what are your personal predictions for the future regarding this issue?
Okay, so I believe an increased number of people will grow concerned about the issue, especially when more young people are going to be starting to vote in coming years. Coal power plants will hopefully fade out, leaving us with the only choice, renewable energy, to provide for everybody.
Wow, that is truly inspirational. Thank you so much for joining Near a Fern, hosted by me, Max. Brought to you by
Addison. And Ms. Patterson, if you look in the description of this video, you will see all of my sources. Thank you.